All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Code Talk Tuesday. Every Tuesday at 4 p.m., I talk about something interesting that's happening in the coding world, or I show you some useful tools that you can apply when you're out of this program in the workforce. Or I just explain some of the things that this program doesn't cover, just so you have a deeper understanding of what's happening in the coding world, couple of terms that you need to be familiar with, or just interesting things that I want to share with you. So every Tuesday at 4 p.m., I'll be here talking, and anybody is welcome to join. And I would like for you to... All right, today we're going to be talking about alpha and beta testing, what that is. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what that is, when we use it, why we use it specifically, what the differences are between the two, the benefits, some pros and cons, and I'm going to show you two examples of two companies, one that performed beta testing and one that didn't, and the consequences that happened to both of these companies. All right, let's start with a broader topic. What is user testing? So both alpha and beta testing, they fall under a user testing group. So user testing, what that is? Basically, we ask users to provide any input on whatever we are building, whether it's be a social media, a website, a project, a system, a product, anything like that. So user testing, basically it's in the name, very simple. We're just going to ask the user to provide their feedback. We're going to give them a little demo, a little sneak peek of what our product is. Then the user will, use it for a couple of weeks or days, and then they're going to send us their feedback back, and we're going to work with that feedback. It can either be a formal or informal process. What that means is either you're just going to ask some people, hey, use my program, see how it is. Or it can be a formal process with all of the proper documentation and, on a much larger scale. So it can either be on a small scale or on a large scale. It all falls under user testing. Why it's important? Well, because we as developers, we cannot replicate every single thing that's going to happen in the real world. That's why it's called the real world. We never know what's going to happen. We never know how our system will react to every single possibility that's out there, to every single action that a user might want to take. That's why user testing is so important. We want the users to test our system to see if it's capable to produce exactly what our users need when they're using it. Now, alpha testing. One thing that I want you to know, even before we start talking about this, that alpha testing usually comes before beta testing. So just look at the names, A and B. Alpha starts with A, beta starts with B. So alpha comes before beta. That's an easy trick to remember and which way they go. Alpha testing is usually performed by a specific group. What that means is usually the employees are going to be performing this part of testing. So employees either in your company, or you're going to outsource these people that are going to test your system for specific things that you are looking for. It is done in a controlled environment. What that means, again, you're just going to be testing your system for specific stuff. For example, you want to see how your login feature works or how the file upload feature works. You're going to ask these people to test specific things, so you are controlling how your system is performing. We do that just to ensure that our software is functional, and we want to make sure that our software meets all of the design specifications that were set before this product began, the production of the product began. So just think of it as we're trying to see if our system is doing exactly what we wanted to do, exactly what we were asked to code. Just think of it of that way. It also detects any issues or bugs that the software has before we release it to a larger group of people, whether it be the actual launch, if somebody decides to not perform beta testing. So either you test that all of these bugs and issues are fixed before you launch your product, or before you launch it into the beta testing. All of the benefits of this sort of testing, we're just going to improve the overall quality of a software. So imagine you don't perform any of the testing, you just do your regular debugging, and then you just release your product into, into the real world. Of course, you're gonna have a lot of issues, you're gonna have a lot of bugs, your software might be unusable in some cases, and we never want that. We always want to avoid that. We always want to make sure that our software is as functional as possible, that it is as perfect as it can be before we actually launch it as a product. Now, beta testing. Beta testing is performed by the actual users. What that means is that we're going to take our program or our product after we perform the alpha testing, and we're going to give it to the people. We're going to give it to a select group of people. It can be random people. It can be some avid users. For example, if it's a game that's being released, we might give it to people who love our games, who love our products. Just so they can give us feedback on how our software is performing. It is done in a real world environment. Remember, alpha testing is done in a controlled environment. So this is the key difference. Beta testing is done in a real world environment. What that means is basically we just push it out there, we give it to the people, and we tell them to go crazy with it. Just do whatever they want to do with it and just give us feedback on how our system is performing. Beta testing is important because it's going to identify actual real world issues. So we cannot test everything. As I said before, unfortunately, we cannot test everything that might happen to our system when it goes into the market, goes into the real world. So that's why beta testing is so important, because people are going to help us identify which issues we might have missed, which problems our software might have that we are not aware of. So it's just a very beneficial process for everybody, for people who want to try our product before the release. It can be very rewarding. And again, for us, it's very rewarding because we can fix all of these issues before our product is actually released. Benefits of beta testing. Well, the most important one, we're going to gather the feedback from actual users, from people who are going to use this product in the future once it goes into the market. So people are going to give us some feedback. We're going to look at it, we're going to evaluate that feedback, and we're going to make necessary changes to our software based on that feedback. It's going to identify all of the issues that have not been found during alpha testing. That's why beta testing is so important, is that yes, we found some issues during our alpha testing, but again, remember that it is done in a controlled environment. Beta testing, real world, it's fair game. So any issues that are found, we can fix them before we actually release our product. It's going to ensure that the software not only meets the design requirements, but it also meets the needs of the intended users. So, for example, our software can match all of the requirements that the customer asked us for. It can be top-notch, but again, we may have lost something along the way. We may have forgotten about some issues or some features that the users actually need. So you can gather that feedback and then act accordingly based on that feedback if you want to add whatever features the users are telling you they need, or if you don't need those features. Again, you just get that feedback that you cannot get anywhere else. Now let's talk about the key differences, just a little refresher, a little reminder so you can memorize it better. Alpha is done by the developers and the users, so it is performed by the employees, mostly, of some company, specific hired people that are going to perform this testing for you. Now, the beta testing, mainly it's just the people who love your company or love your product, or people that just want to be a part of a smaller community that gain access to your program earlier. Alpha is done in a controlled environment, while beta focuses on the real world environment. And alpha is going to check if the software meets any of the design requirements that we had, and beta checks for the needs of the user. So these are the key differences between the two. And I want to show you two examples. First one is Cyberpunk the game that came out in 2020, and the other one is the Counter-Strike 2 game. Again, I picked those two just because they are very similar, because they're both games, and I'm gonna show you why beta testing is so important, why you would want to do that with your product, and yeah, what are the consequences of not doing the beta testing. A little bit for people who don't know about Cyberpunk 2077, probably some of you are already familiar with this game, but back in 2020, this game came out, and before it came out for a couple of years, it was the biggest talk in the gaming industry. Everybody was so excited that this game is coming out. It was supposed to be one of the biggest games ever created because the users were promised open world, the users were promised different endings based on the choices that you make, fully customizable skins for your characters, and a lot more. Just like this game was a big thing in the gaming industry, so everybody was very excited when this game was coming out. However, the game took a little bit longer to produce. It took a little bit longer than, this company, CD Projekt Red, expected. And they just decided to not do beta testing. They, as soon as they finished with the game, as soon as they were done with the alpha testing, they just put this game out in the world. On the official launch, 13 million copies were sold. Just imagine for a second, 13 million people bought this game. And this game was not cheap. This game was around, I think it was around $60, $60 to $70 in that range. The collector's edition of this game was $250, so it's a lot of money. Well, people started playing this game, and what do you think happened? There were a lot of issues. The game was basically unplayable. I was one of the people, let me see. Oh yeah, this launch, yep. I was one of the people who bought this game. I pre-ordered this game because I was so excited to play it back in 2020, and it wouldn't run. It just wouldn't run on my PC, even though I had all of the requirements that, I needed: the GPU, the I had the good processor, I had enough RAM, so my computer was supposed to run this game, but it was, I don't know what went wrong. This game just wouldn't run on my computer, and I had to refund it, unfortunately. But what happened is that people started playing this game, and a lot of popular streamers started also streaming this game on a platform called Twitch. What happened is this game was very, very buggy. The cars were flying, the cars were driving through the buildings, the NPCs were walking backwards, the NPCs were walking on their heads. Like, it was a whole mess. And what do you think happened? 51 million in refunds. You can see that on my screen. 51 million in refunds. That's how much money the company had to give back to the people because the game was just unplayable. During the launch, after the launch, in the next month or two, the company lost 75% of its market value. And that is just a crazy number for any of the companies to lose that much of the market value. It's a total failure. So as you can see, how you can go from being the most anticipated game in the world, the most anticipated product of your time, to almost going bankrupt because you didn't perform the right testing. Of course, there were a lot of fans that were disappointed. It was a whole deal. Twitter was blowing up with, people bashing this company and saying that they will never support this company ever again just because they didn't perform the right testing for this game. But rightfully so, a lot of people were upset. The game was unplayable. But let me show you an example of a good gaming company. Well, good gaming company. They still had their issues, but they did perform beta testing. Counter-Strike 2. Counter-Strike 2 released, I'm pretty sure, in either October of 2023 or November of 2023, somewhere around that time. But they did perform a beta testing of their new game. Previously, it was called Counter-Strike Global Offensive. A lot of people loved this game. A lot of people played this game all over the world. And they decided to move their game to a different engine, a different gaming engine. what they needed to do is perform alpha testing, beta testing, which they did. This game was in beta testing from March up until September of 2023. So that's March, April, May, June, July, August, September. That's 7 months of being in beta testing. People were gaining access to this game, the fans of this game, they were just getting access. You could register on their website if you wanted to be one of the beta testers. And I think around 20,000 people signed up to be beta testers. So you had a pool of 20,000 people that were giving you feedback almost every day based on what they were experiencing with your product for 7 months in a row. That's a lot of knowledge, and that's a lot of feedback that's coming from just regular people who, you know, who just love your game, who love what you do, love your product, and want your product to be better. They were posting update patches all the time. They were posting update patches almost every single day. For the beginning of the beta testing, it was almost every single day some sort of update would come and fix something within this game. And of course, the interest from fans was astronomical, because people who had access to the beta testing, they would post about this game, and they were impressed with how thoughtful the company is, that they're updating the game based on the feedback that they're getting from just regular users like you and me. So it was a great way to, first of all, promote your new product with the beta testing, ensure that it meets all of the users' needs, and make sure that, you know, Cyberpunk does not repeat itself, because I think that was a big example to most of the gaming companies out there, that how you can go from being on the top to almost going bankrupt. So moving forward, I hope that never happens again. And again, this is a very great lesson to why beta testing is so important, and why it's important to take time. No matter how long your product takes to make, you have to test it properly before you launch it on a much larger scale. Does anybody have any questions for me?